let's talk about the misconceptions about Mexico in general. So I've been living in Mexico for a little over 3 months, and I had my own firsthand experiences with living there, although I'd heard a lot of things from family, friends, from society, the media, about Mexico is so scary, Mexico is a third world country, all of these things, and I am here to tell you my perspective in terms of if that's true or not. So, first of all, I was in Puerto Vallarta for most of that 3.5 months. Of course, that's a very touristy place, so that's definitely going to taint the perception or experiences that I had. It's a really safe place to be, one of the safest places in Mexico. But I did actually get to visit Guadalajara for a week, and I was in Ocatlan for a weekend. So I did get to experience different types of Mexico, even though maybe it wasn't exactly, in the depths or the scariest places of Mexico. But it's like, I'm a gringo, I'm a negrito. Why would I go to those places, right? So I went to the places that were like anyone would go if they are tourists, if they're starting their journey of living abroad. I went to places that are well known, have some decent infrastructure, and are friendly to tourists. So those are the places that I went. Now, let's talk about some of these misconceptions. The first misconception would be that there are a lot of Mexicans trying to cross the border. Now, that is not true. Of course, there are people who do cross the border looking for better work in the USA. A lot of them make a lot of their money and send it home to help their families. That is definitely true, but this idea that it's like in mass amount of people leaving Mexico for the United States is a blatant lie. In fact, more people come from El Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela. They're coming all the way from those other countries into Mexico to cross the border into the United States for a better life. So there is a bit of a misconception that it's all Mexicans. It is a lot of Central Americans, but they're not necessarily Mexicans. I find that a lot of Mexicans are very, very much happy to be home in their country. They love their home country. They just sometimes, economically, it would serve people better to leave and to make money in the US. But a lot of them want to come back to Mexico. They don't want to stay in the United States. The United States isn't the end-all be-all. It's not an amazing place. It is a great place to make money. That's the real truth. So that's one misconception. Every person that I met in Mexico, at least in Puerto Vallarta, loved where they lived and weren't looking to leave. Second misconception is that it's cheap to live in Mexico. I would not say that it's true. It depends on where you're at, for sure. But if you live in any kind of big town or major city, it's not cheap. It's definitely maybe cheaper than what you're experiencing in the United States if you live in a big city. But it wasn't cheap to live there. It was affordable for sure. I did enjoy that there were some cheaper prices and things, but some things were not cheap, especially if you're looking for imports. You wanted some name brands from the United States, you're gonna be paying the import price for those things. So, and housing, depending on what you were willing to put up with, could be very cheap or it could be very expensive. I saw Teslas in Mexico. I saw really cheap cars in Mexico. It just depended on where you were, what your status of life was. It's not cheap. It's not cheap to live here, depending on what you're looking for. But if you live in a major big city like the Bay Area, LA, Seattle, Atlanta, New York, yeah, definitely it's cheaper. It's definitely cheaper. So it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're coming from Middle America, it's actually probably the same price to live here. You probably would save a lot in gas, in cars, because in the Midwest, there's not a lot of infrastructure for public transportation. In Mexico, you have the public bus system, and a lot of times it's like 10 pesos or cheaper depending on where you're at. Ubers are really cheap. You can take an Uber anywhere for like between $5 and $10. So different things will cost you different amounts of money. But if you're willing to shop at the grocery store, not eat out a lot, you can save a lot of money here for sure. It just depends on your lifestyle requirements. Let's talk about the big one, cartels. Oh, cartels. Yeah, there are cartels in the United States, okay? The government is just as corrupt as it is here in Mexico. There's issues with drug dealers, there's issues with organized crime in every country. And Mexico gets a lot of bad rap for it because the media tries to portray it as this like monolithic thing, and it's not. It's just like anywhere. If you are dealing drugs, if you're doing drugs, yeah, you're gonna get yourself kind of involved in the cartel situation. But if you don't do any of those things, you mind your business, you keep your nose clean, you cool, you're not gonna have any issues with cartels. It's not gonna be an issue. If you hear anything on the news about something related to the cartels, it probably is because some American was doing something they shouldn't have been doing. They were in a place they shouldn't have been. They were interacting with people they shouldn't have been with. It's like common sense. You do research before you go anywhere, and you should know where you're supposed to be and where you're not supposed to be. So I didn't have any issues with cartels. I don't see anyone talking about cartels. It's something that is propaganda that the United States likes to push out so they can get more clicks and more eyeballs so they can sell more advertisements. It's not an issue. I'm not worried about getting kidnapped here, okay? Like, it's just not a thing. It's like any other city. It's fine. There's no issues. It being imported by Vallarta specifically, there wasn't really any crime. So I didn't really have anything to worry about. But yeah, cartels, it's BS. If you don't do drugs, if you're not engaging in crime, you're not gonna have any issues. Another misconception is that Mexico is a monolith. It is not a monolith. It is a country of 32 states. The official name of Mexico is the United States of Mexico, okay? 32 different states with very different cultures and very different cultures within those states. So I was mainly in Jalisco. It's a wonderful state. Lots of different culture. I mean, Puerto Vallarta is a coast. I went to Guadalajara, very, very different, major city. I would compare that to San Francisco in a lot of ways, very similar in terms of like the lifestyle, the speed, the acceptance of gay people. Puerto Vallarta is pretty gay too as well. And then oppose that to Ocatlan, which is more of a town. It's smaller. It's more, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just more real. More people maybe living closer to the poverty line than in Guadalajara or Puerto Vallarta, but still very vibrant community. There are rich people there as well. It's just there are middle class people there. It's just different, you know. It's more inland than anything else. But yeah, it's not a monolith. We were in the Malecon going to McDonald's one day, and we noticed that they were lining up for a parade, and it was dancers. And my partner used to be a dancer when she was a kid, so she's like, "Oh, that's cool. Like I recognize all of this." She recognized all of that and decided, and we were like, "Oh, let's go follow them," you know. So we finished our food, we followed them to Los Arcos, and they happened to be putting on a dance showcase of all of the cultures from the 32. I don't know if it was all 32 states, but it was several states, and it was like ended up being a 3-hour dance showcase performance. And it was children, it was women, men, older people together doing the cultural dances of the particular state that they were from. And it was very different. All of the dances were very different. A lot of the clothes were very different. It was very, very cool. Made my partner really nostalgic from her childhood. So that was really cool. And it was free. We just sat there. There were vendors coming by, sharing, selling food. And then after when we were done, we went to right across the street to the plaza and had some delicious street food at the plaza. So it was a really wonderful experience, and that just kind of shows you like the diversity in the culture of Mexico. It was really cool to see this like in one spot. I got to see a whole bunch of different backgrounds and experiences. So the last misconception that I will talk about is that there is a hatred for Black people. So that is definitely not the case, not the case that I experienced in Mexico. I think maybe people are conflating that with some experiences they've had in the US with Mexican Americans, maybe not liking Black people. I'm not sure if that's where it's coming from, but I have not experienced that in Mexico. I would say it's the exact opposite. People are very friendly to Black people, or to people were friendly to me. As long as I was trying to speak Spanish, people were incredibly nice to me. Of course, I got stares, mainly because people were like surprised to see me sometimes, especially when I was like in Ocatlan. I think when I was alone, I didn't get as many stares until my wife came with me, Jay, because she is clearly Latina. She is much lighter skinned than I am, and we definitely got looks. Like, people would look at us not in disgust or anything, just more in curiosity. They'd probably just like, wow, I've never seen a Black person and a Latin person together. That's not really common. I don't see it here. And that was really, really the case I noticed in Guadalajara. When we were in Guadalajara, I did notice colorism. That seems, I think, be more of a thing here than anything, is colorism or classism is more of an issue than like racism. every couple that I saw in Guadalajara had the same skin tone. If you were dark, your partner was dark. If you were light, your partner was light. It was like almost exactly the same skin tone. We were the only couple that I saw that had such a drastic color difference in our skin. So I would say that is like more uncommon. People are probably more worried about like having dark children, to just be honest with you. Like, that's more of a concern. There's more of a colorism concern than a racist concern. No one really cared. I think most people just thought I was probably, if I didn't open my mouth, they probably thought that I was from a Latin country that had like more black Latin people in it. So maybe I was from Brazil or Venezuela or Colombia or Honduras or something like that, right? So no one cared that I was black. No one treated me differently. I've had nothing but positive experiences. So yeah, no, there's a lot of misconceptions about Mexico, and most of them are really drastically wrong. And if you want to experience anything, you should never let other people tell you how it is. You shouldn't even really believe me. You should have your own experiences. You should come places and check things out for yourself, get a lay of the land, see how it is for you, and come in with an open mind and be respectful of the culture and try your hardest to speak the language, and you shouldn't have an issue. That's my perspective on it. So that's it. That's for this video. If you like this kind of content, please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the things. Really appreciate you trying to grow the channel. If you are looking for help in moving abroad, I do help people. I like to call myself a lifestyle architect. I help you build and design your house, your life, be that moving abroad, changing careers, taking a sabbatical, financial wellness. I help with that as well. So if you're looking for any kind of help like that, please reach out to me. My information is in the description below, and I will see you in the next one.